Hey, what's up, everybody? I hope you had a good weekend. We're going to do a quick presentation, a quick lesson this week on the people of Reconstruction. This module really builds on Module 19, which was Reconstruction itself. This just basically gives you a look into who's doing the reconstructing, because it is a significant shift in the power structure. You don't have the rich whites running things in the South during this time, and really it's a complete shift in dynamic. So here are the three things that I want you guys to know once you've watched this presentation. You should be able to describe how sharecropping tied African Americans to their former plantations. You should be able to explain the roles women had during Reconstruction. You should be able to define what a scallywag and carpetbagger is and describe their roles in Reconstruction. So we're going to get started with sharecropping. Now, sharecropping is an unfortunate sort of side effect of the Freedmen's Bureau. The Freedmen's Bureau actually, part of its job was to find jobs for the freed African Americans. But unfortunately, what happened is the African Americans, many of them can't read or write. They've done nothing their entire life other than farm. So they have to come up with some way to find them a job when they have no skills and really no education whatsoever. So the solution is we're going to put them back on the farms where they formerly were slaves, and they're going to be what is called a sharecropper. Now, most of you probably did this in elementary school, but I am going to kind of go over on the next slide the sharecropping agreement. But in the agreement, basically the former slaves, who are the sharecroppers themselves, they provide the labor, and the slave owners, the former slave owners, provide everything else: the land, the tools, and the supplies, because it is their plantation. At the end of the season, what happens is the owner and the sharecropper, who is the former slave, both take part of the crop. And it sounds like a good agreement, like you have what I need and I have what you need, but you can see right here what actually happens. Here is the sharecropping cycle, and the entire purpose of this is to keep the former slave on the plantation. So if we start right here with number one, the sharecropper receives land and seed. In exchange, he promises landowner half the crop. Now this part sounds pretty good, but then you go over here. The sharecropper, who's the former slave, has to buy food and clothing on credit from the landowner's store. So the former slave is buying food and clothing on credit. Well, then number three, the sharecropper plants and harvests the crop. So the slave is doing all the work here. Number four, sharecropper gives landowner crop to sell. The sharecropper gets half the earnings minus his debt for the year. So you get half, but then I'm going to take out everything that you bought on credit. Number five, when settling up, the landowner says that the sharecropper owes more than he has earned. So back here in step two, they actually borrowed more than they earned from step four. Number six, to pay debt, the sharecropper promises the landowner a greater share of next year's crop. So we're going to start the whole cycle over in year two, but down here, it's not going to be half and half. The next year, the landowner is going to get maybe 60%, and the slave's going to get 40%. But then they're going to have to settle up, and they're going to be even more in debt after year two. And it's a vicious cycle that keeps the former slave on the plantation. So this was definitely not a good agreement for African Americans. The only problem is, where else are they going to go? They have no skills and no education. Now, in the meantime, there are other people. Sorry about this picture being so small, but for some reason, there's not a whole lot of pictures with women teaching in Freedmen's Bureau schools. There are groups that are doing positive things during Reconstruction, and the women are definitely helping the South try to rebuild in any way they can. Now, many Northern women came and they taught in the freedmen's schools, so they are taking the reins and doing the education for many African Americans in those Freedmen's Bureau schools. The wealthy white women, I try not to feel too sorry for them, but it does point out in the read they have to now do their own housework. They don't have slaves anymore, and so they have a really tough time adjusting to the fact that they have to actually do their own housework. Again, this isn't something we're going to feel too sorry for them for. Unfortunately, there are many men that were killed during the Civil War, and so women are going to have to do stuff that's not a traditional role. It's not going to be cooking and cleaning. They're maybe even going to be running the entire plantation. Even with the sharecroppers, they will be in charge of the sharecropping agreements. One positive thing for women, probably the most positive thing for women, is finally in 1868, if there's any women who are watching this, you could finally own some property. So up until 1868 in South Carolina, a woman could not own property legally. All right, we're going to finish up with two of my favorite groups of people, the carpetbaggers and the scallywags. Now, this cartoon is a carpetbagger. You can see he's not exactly thought of in the most flattering terms by the Southerners, but here's the deal with them. During Reconstruction, African Americans needed people on their side. Obviously, most of the whites in the South were not on their side, and so there happened to be two groups that are going to form this bond with African Americans and basically take political control. You've got the scallywags. The scallywags are Southern whites. The way that I always remember them is scallywag starts with an S, and so does Southern. So scallywags are actually the ones from the South, but they take advantage of the Freedmen's Bureau and think that they can better the South. So even though they are Southern whites, they are siding with the North and with African Americans and saying, hey, let's actually appeal to African Americans, let's help them out. And then you've got the most hated group, the carpetbaggers. Carpetbaggers are, it says entrepreneurs. Sometimes they were positive, sometimes they were scams. They're teachers sometimes, and usually they're always businessmen. So they're here from the North to make money. Bottom line, they're trying to make money. And so together, you've got these three groups, the African Americans, the carpetbaggers from the North, and the scallywags from the South. They're going to make up the voting bloc for the Republicans. So when the Republicans take over during Reconstruction, it is these three groups that actually kind of form the backbone of the Republican Party. Now, our word of the week is carpetbagger. And to show you how the South really feels about carpetbaggers and scallywags, I'm going to end on a cartoon that depicts our word of the week, carpetbagger. Obviously, this is not a very positive cartoon. You've got the carpetbagger from Ohio is there hanging, and then this is representative of a scallywag. And of course, it is the KKK that is threatening to hang both the scallywags and the carpetbaggers because the KKK considers them basically traitors to the white way of life and the Southern way of life. So that is the people of Reconstruction. I hope you guys have a fabulous week. I will be available on the Meet on Wednesday and Friday. If you have any questions or need any extra assistance, please stay dry. It seems like it's been raining for weeks. And I will talk to you soon.